Welcome back to Tech Talk. This is Ryan with IK here. If you're not familiar, Tech Talk is a weekly stream in a daily streaming series from IK where we're going to be going over tips and tricks with all your IK gear. And we're going to have a live Q&A and giveaway under each session. So today what we're going to be doing is giving away a copy of MODO DRUM at the end of the broadcast, so stay tuned. We're going to be using the program to run through a bunch of different tips and tricks, how to use it, how to get set up, all the different MIDI controls, what they mean, which it's going to be pretty interesting. It's a physically modeled drum plugin, which is a little bit different than what you might expect. It doesn't include only samples, which most drum VIs do lean towards, and because of that, we have a really small footprint. It's under 10 gigs, so fits on pretty much any hard drive you got. So, all right. Let's go ahead, let's take a look. All right. So, I have a project here I'm going to play for just a second while we get some people in. And this was created with Moto and with a bunch of other IK tools, only IK tools, I'll add. That. All right, so you can hear I got a bunch of different stuff going on there. That's all Moto Drum, and you see it's on this track. I have a little demo plugin where I'm going to show you the tricks that I really use to make that an organic performance. So I'm going to load this up really quick. So what you see here is a bunch of different pages, and I'm going to start on the model page. You can see you have a bunch of different stuff you can pick. These are really good starting points. And you also have presets to get you started too. But I personally like to pick a kit and move. So I'll start with the Studio. That's one of my favorite kits. It sounds great right out the box. Let me play a little bit. All right, so basic kit. I have a little groove here I'm going to use to demonstrate. And we have all these different snares. I love the Babinga snare. I'll load a couple of them for you. And each one of these elements can actually be edited in this nice page. And here the Gentleman. It's good for heavier metal. So let's just pick the Babinga, and I'll start there. I'm going to show you with the snare. You have all these different options. So let's go ahead. I'm going to play the snare a couple of times and just show you what the tension sounds like. With a snare, I kind of like to make the top end a little bit quieter and bring the bottom end up. So you can hear that a little bit. So here, let me show you one of the cooler things with the bass drum. When you pick a bass drum, I'm going to pick the reference for this example. But there's a bunch of options here. Let's go reference. And you can hear that straight off the bat. There's some snare in there. And that's the snare buzz, and that's living in the snare mic. That's not living in the kick mic, which is really cool. And it's organically created as you're playing. So it kind of adjusts with all the velocities and all the different styles and grooves that you use. So check this out. So you kind of hear, like, I like to minimize it around 4 or 5%, which is really just a subtle, like almost the mic on the bottom of the snare. You know, you give it a little bit of life, a little bit more groove. And I use that in this performance particularly to give it a little bit more of a smooth flow. All right, so let's see. Inside of your customize page, you also can pick your toms, all your different cymbals. When you pick your cymbals, you're going to see the edit elements a little bit different. You have tuning, dampening, room, and volume. So this kind of reaches to your mixer page, which is really cool. Oh, I see a question in there about the TD30. We do have mappings for MIDI over here, which are really cool. There's TD50, TD10, but I'll get there in a second. For those of you who just turned in, we're going to be giving away a copy of Moto Drum today at the end of this stream, so stay tuned. So here, let me play you a couple of the cymbals real quick. So, you know, the basics, they get the job done. And then when you want, you can actually go ahead and pick through 3 different options for each. I personally love the elegant ride. And I'm going to play a groove here for a second. I'm just going to switch through some stuff. So basic groove. Let's switch over to the 16-inch. So you got some range there. And let's go basic. They all sound great and they all give you a different unique flow, but the most important thing about Moto is the fact that you can create edit. You can edit the element uniquely that in a way that you can't with samples, with the tuning of the top head, the tuning of the tension of the bottom springs, the depth of the snare. What I actually did with this snare is I brought the diameter up to 15. I'm going to show you what that sounds like. I'm going to pick a little bit better of a groove here. Let's go ahead and go for this guy right here. And the best part is you can always reset it back to default if you've done something crazy and you kind of lost your way. I'll show you in the preset that I created for the stream. It picks every single one of those things up that I just did. So for my snare, you'll see that my tension's all the way down. I have the bottom head kicking really hard and the diameter up a little bit from the default. That gives me that really big kind of snare sound. So on top of this, I want to show you guys the playstyle page. And this is one of the most unique things about Moto. So you have stick level. I'm going to show you what that sounds like. And that's a minimalistic thing. I wouldn't use it too often, but you have it if you need it. Oops. Let's grab this. Oh, it would help if I wasn't routed out to my DAW. You see all of this down here. Let's go ahead. Let's go back to the studio. And if you notice, I have the keys IO selected as my mapping. I'm going to use that to just demonstrate this. You see the play position control is enabled. And that means in the mapping page that I have this control selected as on. And what this does is let you kind of move the snare, move the hit on the snare from the edge to the center in real time. And I'm going to give you an example of how that sounds. Okay. Let's make sure. So you can kind of hear it does get a little bit thin on the edges. And what I like to do with that is in this riff, I'm going to show you. Every time that my drummer plays some ghost notes, you're going to have this MIDI CC message move around. And as he does the ghost notes, he hits the edge. When he hits the center, he goes right back to hitting it nice and heavy. And all these ghost notes are kind of moving around because a drummer would never be able to hit the same spot, even if they wanted to. And what you have to do is kind of think like a drummer in these situations. So as I see you guys noticed, I do have Moto Drum in here routed to a bunch of different tracks. And what I did is inside here, the mixer page, you have the option to route each channel to an individual bus or out to the DAW directly. So you see I have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I've set that up accordingly here. Now, these are stems, so I recorded the output, but the situation is the same. I have the audio then being routed into my external effects. So while I have an SSL compressor on this snare, I'm actually compressing it. I'm actually equalizing it a little bit more afterward. So I'm ignoring this EQ, and I'm kind of using a little bit of both and compressing the master channel before it goes out. So let's see. If you're not familiar with Moto Drum, you do have an overhead and a room section where you can add more or less for every single element in the track. That's really cool and really useful for just quickly adding a bunch of ambience to a recording. I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. And oop, that's on my kick track. So that's my room track. And if you hear this one, this is going to be my overhead. And what I did was I added a Sunset Sound Studio Reverb to my overhead to give it a little bit more excitement. And what I'm going to do is de-ess it a little bit because it's a little bit harsh, especially when the ride comes in at the end over here. Let me play this section. So you can hear right there, it does add a lot more ambience, and I kind of like, I like to swap this out for the Moto Drum room when I have the option. And the reason I did that is because my guitars actually also have that on. And I'm going to play you my guitar stems and show you a little bit. So my guitars are actually running through AmpliTube and then out to a master track where I've had the luxury of adding the live room of Studio 3 from Sunset Sound, which is an insane room. If you're not familiar, the info page explains all of the classic artists who've been in that room and recorded there. So you can see Prince, Prince and the Revolution, Elliott Smith, Social Distortion, Sugar Ray. There's an insane list here. It's hard to keep track, but every page that you go to, you can actually use that info page. And if you're not familiar with T-Rex Studio Reverb, you can check it out in the custom shop. We have a couple-day trial. I'd have to ask our moderator here to correct me on how long that trial is, but you can try it out, and we actually have the introductory pricing extended. So if you like it, you can pick it up for a discount. On top of that, I have my bass stems over here, which I want to show you guys is actually Moto bass. And if you watched the last video, I kind of created something similar. I have all of this really cool stuff on. I'm going to play you the track. So you can hear that's actually Moto bass. I'm sending it like just a nice soft fingerstyle bass through AmpliTube. complete IK rack. I have equal a little bit on there just to kind of smooth things out, give the kick drum some space. If you're not familiar with that, I like to carve out a section. This is where the kick drum really hits heavy. So I leave it some room there. Compression, just a little bit. And I limited the end with the white 2A. It might be a little bit excessive to some, but I like the nice smooth sound that it gives. I'm going to play the mix all the way from the beginning and just give you guys another taste of the sounds real quick, and then I'll jump back into Moto Drum. If you're just tuning in now, make sure to like and subscribe, IK Multimedia. We're going to be giving away a free copy of Moto Drum at the end of this episode. So that's $299 completely free program. Or sorry, it's $399.99 completely free if you stay tuned to the end. Moto singer, that would be a treat. It's always hard to get a vocalist on time and in the studio, but when it's done, it's always a treat. So let's see. I'm going to walk through this Moto Drum one more time for those of you guys who've missed it. Show you a couple of the other cool tricks that I like to do. So I've explained the snare position control, which is going to go from the edge of the snare to the center of the snare with a quick CC command. And you can kind of use that to automate your ghost notes. I like to have the ghost note on the edge, and when I do snare rolls, I like to bring it from the edge to the center. And you can invert if you want. It's going to go from 0 to 127 or 127 to 0. Just play around with it and see what you like there. And if you notice, the mapping page also has left and right hands. This is something very cool that I like to use all the time, and I've set this up custom so I can show you guys here. So what it's going to do is it's going to separate the play style here, and you see the right area is a little bit less accurate than the left area, and it's also going to help with velocity. So check this out. Why didn't you choose the jazz kit for this? Ooh. So actually, I wanted to make a completely unique kit so I could walk you guys through the process, but the jazz is one of my favorite. I love the snare. Here, I'll actually load that for you so you could hear that snare roll that I was just saying. So this is just left and right hand changes. You can hear there's so much, what do you call it, spring in the bottom. The Black Oyster's another really close one to the jazzy kit. So that's really easy to get a nice, cool snare roll going. And if you can't find a right sound from just picking the snare, go to the edit element and you have every single tool. I like to use diameter and depth just to tune to the song. Same with tuning. Dampening is a really cool tool where you can really dull a sound out without having to go to compression or lean on any external processing. And that's the whole point, is that you're all in Moto Drum. You don't have to really reach for anything else. You don't really want to fix it in post or fix it in the mix, as they say. So let's take a look here again. We have our toms. We have 56, which should be a control here. So this is actually going to do the same thing, and this is really cool for quick tom rolls. I'm going to show you what my automation looks like for that tom control, just so you can see it. And yes, I can scroll through the kits in just 1 second. So if you see, I go from the edge really quickly to the inside, and that's what gives me this nice sound and it doesn't sound too robotic when he does this quick roll. That's got to be my favorite part, and it's hard to make those sound really natural, or at least normally it is. With Moto Drum, it's a breeze. It's just a quick CC control. Switch the left and right hand for your fills to give it that unique sound. It goes a little bit farther than Red Robin or traditional techniques. So you can see you have studio. We have the jazzy kit, and every time you load it, it's gonna pull up every single nuance of the kit, so it might take a little bit. Rock, custom, grungy, that Nirvana sound. This is a very studio drum kit sound, very punchy, in your face. Think maybe Audio Slave. Gentleman, if you guys are familiar with new age metal, the off tempo or interesting time signatures. This is a really cool one. Let's see. I'm off. Ooh. And that's just the preset that you pull up. You can go so much farther with it. I never like to stop with a preset. I always like to just pull up maybe the studio kit and go from there. Black Oyster, this is that Beatles kit. You guys like the Gentleman. That's got to be one of my favorite ones for metal. I like to mix the Gentleman with the, here we're getting to it. One of my favorite kits. It's called Extreme, I believe. Yeah, so Extreme and Gentleman, mix those two together and you have a beast of a kit. Throw that with some external processing in your DAW and there's no way that some people can really tell that you're not a real drummer. So you see we have Plexi, you have that John Bonham sound, Led Zeppelin, old school. Reference is just a huge kit, really good for just creating. And what happens is after you load the kit, and since we're just in Moto right now, let's go ahead. Excuse my my CPU meter and my screen taking a second. I'm streaming from the same computer, which we will be streaming all week, so stay tuned. At the end of this episode, if you're just tuning in now, we're going to be giving away a copy of Moto Drum. So this is our reference kit. And if you look here, you can actually right-click and disable any of these sections that you don't want to use. And you notice that some of them, it's grayed out. That's because these are the default sections and you can't really exit them. But you have some really cool cymbals here. I'm going to just play a couple. And I think somebody brought up E-drums already, but I do want to mention that you have MIDI mapping presets here. And we set up a bunch of them so you guys could get started. But personally, what I've found is tuning from one of these is the way to go. I have a DM10 at home, and I use the velocity curve to fine-tune my hi-hat, and it made a night and day difference. You can make the minimal hit or the maximum hit just kind of fine-tuned. And that really helped with my controller because it's more of a budget controller, I'll be honest, but it does the job, and that makes it worth the time. How much CPU does Moto Drum use? I wouldn't use this as a fair example since I'm streaming from the same system, but it's not too bad. I've never really had a problem. It's similar to other drum VIs. I like Superior Drummer 2 a lot. That's a really good one. They're fairly close. Depending on how much you have loaded, that also makes a difference. So if you have a bunch of different stuff in your mixer going, and you have a bunch of different stuff in your mapping page, if you have a computer that you're looking to upgrade, you can always disable a bunch of kits, turn off some effects until you bounce. It never hurts to bounce. I think that's one of the best things you can do. You kind of make decisions quick, and you keep moving, and you make it more about the music than just switching from left to right and all these different options that you have. So here, if you guys want, let's go ahead and give away a free copy of Moto Drum. Don't forget to like and subscribe. But we're going to be giving away $399.99 value. Here we go. So in the chat, let me finish the question before you guys shoot out your answer. But what we're going to do is I want you guys to send a trick or some kind of technique that you use when writing, recording, or editing drums. If you don't record drums live, tell us how you do it in the computer. If you don't do it in the computer, tell us what you do live that makes it so unique. So shoot over your comments, and we'll have our moderator from IK pick our winner here. Here, I'll repeat that for you guys. We're going to shoot a tip or trick that you guys use when you're recording, writing, or editing drums. And here, I'm going to go ahead and play this performance one more time for those people who got here a little bit late so they can hear how you can really customize and use Moto Drum. So you can see it's across all these channels here. I've done a bunch of external processing. It sounds really, really natural. It's up front in the mix so you can hear it. And just take a listen. We'll pick a winner in a second. I see some really great answers. Using Moto Drum, that's got to be one of the best ones. Tuning, gain staging, all very important. MIDI controller with pads. That's actually how I started doing it. I would write the kick drum, I'd write the snare, and then I'd go over and do the hi-hat. In Ableton, if you're not familiar, you have this little overdub button, and you can kind of start from one piece of the drum kit and really move forward. It's really great for automation. Yeah, sorry for the long question, guys. I'm glad I asked it, though, because we got a bunch of good answers. Let's see, playing to a click track. Do you guys see that playing to a click track is always necessary? I know a lot of artists who like to record just kind of on the fly, and they think it gives it more groove. I'm a click track guy, but how do you guys feel about that? Ooh, randomizing velocity and timing slightly. That's a really good one. I almost missed that. So if you guys do write drums and you write them from scratch, which I did this entire performance, I didn't use a MIDI controller or anything, just typed it out. It's really crucial to kind of move around your velocities. If you see, this is never static, and that's very important, and it gives it a really good feel when it's done right. If you look at this fill right here, I've switched from left hand to right hand for both the snare and the tom, and I've switched articulations from the regular snare to the rim shot. So I'm going to play that real quick just so you can hear it, but that one got me. That's a really good one. Yeah, honestly, that was the first one I was going over before the stream. That's my favorite part of writing these little ghost notes. And if you keep the 2 and the 4 on time, you can kind of groove a little bit more here. I like to move it off time just enough to where it feels like it's off time, and then I push it back. You can see here I always rush for my fills, and I found I've kind of just been mimicking my personal playing. And I mean, I'm not the best drummer, but I could correct it on the computer. So I'm going to play that fill one more time and kind of listen for this. It is rushed. It's not on the click track perfectly. Yeah, very. I like the humanization that it gives it. It's just think like a drummer. Switch left and right hands. I know drummers do a lot of strokes that are very specific to the sound that they get. Double strokes are very important to certain sounds. I always kind of put my one hand quieter than the other hand, as you can see, and that's just what I found from my natural playing, and I've kind of mimicked that here. That's one of the keys, and I'm really glad that somebody brought that up. It's also it's not bad if you lay back on the beat. If you're playing something more jazzy or lo-fi. I honestly prefer a little bit slow on the beat, but from what my playing and this kind of style, I thought this really fit well. And if you're an Ableton user, which I saw somebody ask, this is Ableton Live 10 Suite. You do have a groove option here, which I think is really cool. You can use it with all the different grooves in Moto Drum. And I'm going to show you just quickly because we're going over time here a little bit. I'm going to drag in a groove from Moto Drum, and you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. If I were to just take this very basic verse, and that was just asking if I wanted to use its tempo, which I don't. You could see that there is sync to DAW, and you have half and double time, which is really cool for when you're auditioning things. So I'm just going to play that real quick. Would help if it wasn't bypassed. Ooh, I picked that huge reference kit. That's right. So I'm going to show you instead. So you see that the hi-hat does bounce around in velocity, and it kind of moves a little bit. It's a little human. If you want to take it a step further, what you can do is always take this, grab a groove. I personally like the Logic, and find something that fits. You can experiment. If you've written something from scratch, that's a really good way to add a quick element to it if you're in live. I know in Logic there's ways to do it, and a lot of other DAWs there are too, but I figured I'd throw that out there for you. All right, Dark Striker, congratulations. You won a copy of Moto Drum this week. So you have a brand new drummer for quarantine. Your neighbors won't complain. Excellent. And if you guys, if you're watching and you didn't win, don't worry. We do have a bunch of other promotions going on the site. If you're familiar with AmpliTube, Sample Tank 4, Miroslav Philharmonic 2, or Moto Bass, they're all up on sale for up to 50% off on the spring string sale. We also have Fill Your Tank, which is get Sample Tank 4 for free when you purchase a select IK MIDI controller. That one's really cool. So if you're just getting started, that's a really cool one to just kind of move forward and get a full collection and a controller at the same time. And then last but not least, we have T-Rack Sunset Sound Studio Reverb intro pricing. For watching, make sure to subscribe. Tune in next week. If you guys are on Instagram, please follow IK Multimedia. We're going to be doing a live stream tomorrow and the next day. Tomorrow is YouTube. That's going to be the audio toolbox, where we're going to be giving away a copy of AmpliTube 4 with special guest Major 7. So make sure to watch until the very end. And if you guys have a question that we didn't answer, shoot it in the comments. If you guys want to see a specific tech talk, just shoot it over in the comments, and we'll see what we can do. Thank you all for watching. Thanks for joining in. Make sure to subscribe.